Kia ora, Markie here with a very short and very snappy video on retroactive jealousy. I always say that, they end up turning into 10-parters, but let's see, let's start and see where we get to. What I want to talk about today is not talking about things. And one of the things that's been on my mind a lot lately from going on the internet fora is seeing a lot of hopelessness among people, a lot of people that seem to be struggling to get well. And I'm interested in why those people aren't getting well, what the struggle is, what the difficulty is. And I think, there's a number of reasons, and we've touched on this in some other of the videos. But one of the things I see people doing, which I can tell you for a fact is not helping you, is continuing to tell your story or stories. Okay. So on a forum, somebody will go into detail about, what it is they're struggling with their partner's past, and they'll say he used to do this or he did that with her or whatever it might be, and they'll recount the story. Okay, so if you want to get well, the first thing, or maybe the second thing that you need to do, the first thing you need to do is to stop asking questions. Maybe the second thing you need to do is to stop telling your story. Okay, now I can understand, for people with retroactive jealousy, often it's often they spend a long period in the dark before they know that there is such a thing as retroactive jealousy, or they think they're the only one that suffers from it. And that is a horrible state, and then suddenly they come into the light, and they is what happened to me. I kind of was googling all kinds of things to get help, then eventually stumbled upon something that started talking about retroactive jealousy, which is a completely new term. So once you stumble into the light, you want to tell your story. You want to find out, first of all, you want to find out if you're the same as everybody else, or whether, perhaps, this isn't quite the right place for you. Perhaps what's going on for you is something that's slightly different. So you want to tell your story on the forum. You want to say, my wife used to do this with this person in such and such a way, and this is what really bugs me, and this is the thing that I really struggle with, and that's the thing that I really struggle with. What I say to people is do that once if you must. Okay, do that once. And like when people come into therapy with me, they can tell me the stories. They can tell me about what it is specifically that's the main focus of the retroactive jealousy. They can tell me that once, and then it's no more. Okay, you've got it out of your system. You've done the catharsis, because RJ is all about rumination and repetition. It's the wash, rinse, repeat cycle. So the more you tell your story, the more ingrained and embedded it will become, and the less likely it is that you will make a speedy recovery. Okay, so to do the kind of science bit, I'll try and do this kind of fairly succinctly, but we'll wait and see whether I achieve that. I'm going to talk a little bit about neural pathways. Okay, so neural means to do with the nerves, and often it refers to the brain, because the brain is a mass of nerves. The brain is full of nerve cells. The nerve cells aren't little kind of round things like this. They're long, stringy things like that. And what happens is there's loads of them, and they can all connect up in various different ways. So I'm kind of trying to illustrate this with my fingers here. Okay, so this finger could connect with this nerve cell, or it could connect with that nerve cell. So when we think or when we do anything, a chain reaction occurs where one nerve cell connects to another, connects to another, connects to another, connects to another, and that's how we do things. That's how we learn to do things. So when we do something for the first time, it's really difficult because the nerve cells are finding their own way. What your brain is doing, without you being aware of this, is working out how to make the connection. So in order to wiggle your toe, nerves have to move in a particular way. So to use that finger analogy, this nerve might connect with that one, and then the other end of this would connect with this one, and there's a whole kind of pattern. And another way, kind of maybe another analogy to maybe look at it is pathway across grass. If you can imagine a kind of, you know, like a maybe like a park where the paths haven't been put in a very kind of obvious place, so people cut across the grass. And what will happen is, you know, there will be a first person who cuts across the grass. And when they cut across the grass, you won't be able to see where they've cut across the grass unless you're a kind of skilled tracker. Okay, but if another person cuts across the grass in the same way, you still might not be able to see it. But after a year of 20 people a day cutting across that grass, there's going to be a groove and there's going to be a path, because that routeway has been reinforced. So think about your brain as the potential for lots of different routeways, and each time we do something, they get reinforced. So a little experiment to do. If you take your dominant hand and write your signature, okay, you can pause while you do this. And when you've done that, come back to the video. The second part is take your non-dominant hand, so if you're right-handed, your left hand, vice versa, and write your signature, and just notice the difference between the experiences of those two things. So the first one was effortless. Your signature kind of did itself, didn't it? It was, you know, very little conscious effort. It was, you know, almost an automatic process, where when you did it with your left hand, unless you're ambidextrous, it would have been a real effort. Every movement of that pen would have been conscious and deliberate and probably quite difficult. Okay. So this is a kind of long rambling way really of saying that the more we do something, the more we repeat a behaviour, the more it gets ingrained, and the more difficult it is to change, and the more likely it is that we'll slip into it automatically, you know, when we're on autopilot and we're not really thinking. So this is why change is difficult. This is why changing our thought patterns is difficult. And this is why we kind of, you know, one of the reasons, there's a lot more to this, there's so many angles to retroactive jealousy, but this is one of the things that goes on. So the more you think the thoughts, the more ingrained they get, and if you speak them out loud, that's ingraining them even more, because you're involving more motor nerves in the action of speaking. And if you type them, you're using motor nerves in the action of writing them out. It's a stronger sensory input when you're typing or writing. So don't keep telling your story. Okay, if you're in distress and you want to use the forum, whatever forum you might use, to get help from peers, you know, please do that. I'm not at all discouraging you from doing that, but what I would say is just don't go into the details. Just say, you know, I'm being triggered by the same old thing, and it's really getting me down, and you know, and I need to know I'm not alone, or I need some encouragement. Okay, but don't tell the story of, oh, you know, in 1936 my husband winked at I don't know, somebody that was running a tea store, whatever it might be. Okay, and I'm kind of being flippant and kind of being making light and making fun of the kind of the content of that. And if you've got retroactive jealousy, you might actually be insulted by that and say, well, no, you know, what my partner did was serious. It wasn't. You know, these things are only serious in our mind. You know, we need to actually be laughing at the content of what our retroactive jealousy is focusing on. So, more laughter, less repetition, no storytelling. Rangimarie.